Well, good morning, folks. Let me share my screen really quick. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about catalyzing environmental and climate action and how that requires communities to move from adversaries to allies. And I have had a number of different roles in education as a secondary humanities classroom teacher. I was a site level director of sustainability at a time when there was only two of us in the country who had that job full time. I've been a county environmental literacy and sustainability coordinator, and now I work for a nonprofit called 10 Strands as a chief innovation officer to try to take some of the work I did as a classroom teacher and a site level director and a county coordinator to scale across the state of California. And hello, my California people. It's nice to see you. um, so what have I learned in my journey as a change maker over the years with this work? Well, one thing is that the vision that I really brought, and this started as a classroom teacher and is still the vision I use today, is one of whole systems change. And part of that is so that I could bring in the whole community. And I learned that whole systems change is transformative and requires all hands on deck. And because of that, it's easy for folks to fall into the adversarial relationships when you're doing whole systems change, because turns out not everyone likes change, which was a learning that I needed to have in the early days of my career. And so something that I had to learn was how to take people from being adversaries over here on the left to really be allies, so that we were doing this work together and that we had a common vision. And a lot of what helped me do that was having a deep understanding of change and change theory. And I'll just share, I'll share these slides in a little bit. And in the notes of these slides, there's all these different resources. So I'll pop this one into the chat box really quick. This is something that I developed over the years. And a lot of the learning that I took from this was actually during while I was a classroom teacher. I realized that I was trying to take change that I was doing in the classroom, like I was inspiring all these teenagers and these youth, and they were all into environmental and climate action, and we were trying to like take that next leap to whole systems change across the school, and we were just told no constantly, no, 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 by administrators. We weren't really having a lot of success with bringing the whole community in. So I had to really learn like how to use these change theories, basically to get what I wanted, right? And to get what we wanted, which was to make this transformative change across the community. And so I'll talk a little bit about a couple of these. So one thing is that I had to really understand that what we were bringing was disruptive. We were disrupting the status quo. And so I had to work with my students and myself to really figure out, okay, if these are the characteristics we have as disruptors, this little piece down here is that we need to figure out how to shift constituents from adversaries to allies. And one of the things that we used to do that was to really think about like messaging matters. And so I got really familiar with this idea of taking people through the realizations that they needed to have to go from denial and shock to all the way up here to engaging in a new beginning. So learning how to use those strategies. And as I moved up in my career to site level director of sustainability, I got better and better at like figuring out how to tailor messages to different audiences. The other thing I learned along the way was like when you're engaging the whole community, it truly is like top down and bottom up. Like you need both. And so in order to do that, I had to figure out how to help the top and the bottom go from adversaries to allies, and really help them get on the same timeline. So really help them figure out like how can we take those who want to be in this mild timeline for change and those who want to be in spicy, and bring the worlds together and find the right timeline that's going to work for this community. Another piece of the journey that I learned over time has been around change management and understanding the phases of change, and really getting familiar with this over here, that when you're bringing this kind of change to a community, that everybody's going to be at different phases of this, and different projects are going to be at different phases of this, and that this is not necessarily linear. And sometimes you're going to do a project that's going to be intended to get more people to buy in, but that project itself is going to take like different levels of assessment and implementation and advanced continuous improvement. And that when you're going through these phases, there's like this process of change where you're taking people from status quo to getting them all the way to fruition. And there's going to be this little monster down here that's going to try to stop you, because people want to bring things back to the status quo. And so a lot of the learning journey that I had to make was was realizing like how to get past those monsters that are lurking there and how to really move things forward into fruition, and to accept failure sometimes. Sometimes things fail, and to really learn from like what was the thing that failed. And I'll say, like, for me, when I went from my classroom teacher to site level director of sustainability, the thing I learned was that I was pitting myself up against like decision makers all the time, and thinking that there was something wrong with them. Like, why can't they just get on board with this? And really, I like the failure that I had to recognize was that I needed to change, and I needed to become a better like deliverer of the message, or be better at bringing the community in. So those were some of the learnings that I made in my journey. And I wanted to make sure that I ended this with just kind of sharing some tools that I think other people can use that can be really helpful. So this first tool is like how to develop a compelling shared vision. So I oftentimes I have a little handout in the notes for the slides of how to use an image like this from Project Learning Tree to get people really excited about what environmental and climate action in schools really looks like, and to say things like, to take people through an exercise where they look at this image and they think about, well, we want all these things too, and they get to recognize the little things that get them excited and get them bought into the vision. So that's one tool I could share. Another tool is like having an operationalizing framework. So that's something that I learned along the way, is that I really needed to have this framework for change, and let people know that it's everything and it's everybody, and really getting people excited about that vision. I also think it's important to make the crisis easy to understand. It's pretty intense thinking about these crises, and the stakes are really high. And sometimes it's easy to get lost in all the details. And so this resource that's in here, and I'll just pop it into the chat box. This is like a one pager of like, why are we doing this? What is this compelling crisis that we have that's going on? So I highly recommend using a tool like a one-page overview, like this is what the problem is, and here's where we're trying to get. One of the last things I'll share is that I feel like it's helpful in a school community to, especially for the employees, is to reframe responsibility as an opportunity. So one thing that I really focused on was bringing this message that the world can become what we teach, which I appreciate from my colleague Zoe Weil. And this idea of educating to survive and thrive. Like, the reason we're bringing this change is because we're trying to survive and thrive. And when we bring this change to our schools, the world can become what we're seeing here. So these are some of the tools that I wanted to share. And then the last one here is is a really practical tool, which is how to really develop successful district-wide sustainability committees. And I think that one for a lot of folks is really at the heart of the challenge of bringing the community in, is really trying to figure out what is the right structure that's going to drive the behavior that we're looking for, and how do we get communities to consistently prioritize sustainability. And sometimes a really well-formed district-wide sustainability committee can do that. So those are a couple of the tools that I wanted to share. Appreciate the time today to do so. And Alex, I appreciate you inviting me in to do this, because it really pushed me to write that essay that I've been wanting to write for a long time. So I'll share the slides right there, and that's it for me.